Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us for the next hour. My name's Jeff Shepherd, and I'm the VP for EMEA for Yellowfin, and it's my great pleasure to do the opening few comments for this webinar. You got the pleasure of speaking with AIGS, one of our key partners. AIGS has been a partner of Yellowfin for many years, and we work very closely together, and they're doing some great work with some of their customers. The real star of the show is Annalene from Intender, who will be talking specifically about what Intender have done with their products and how they've embedded. So as Yellowfin, we are increasingly seeing the demand for advice, guidance, and help and expertise regarding contextual analytics. I won't give my explanation of what it is, because that's exactly what Gustav from AIGS will be doing very shortly. One of the things I would ask you to do, please, is we do have room at the end for questions and answers, so please submit your questions through the chat and through the actual Q&A chat, not just the general chat, and we will get around to those at the end of the presentation. If for whatever reason we run out of time, we will make a note of any questions, and we will make sure that we give you a specific answer to any of those questions. So it's with great pleasure, and I'm looking forward to this myself. I'm sure I'm going to learn something as well, that I will be handing over to Gustav from AIGS, and he will take you through the first half of the presentation. So thank you so much. Gustav.
Thank you, Jeff. Much appreciated. Thanks for the kind words. It's really a pleasure, and I feel privileged to be presenting this. Maybe just as a bit of background, people might ask, what makes me qualified to talk about this? So I think, first of all, just a bit of background. I've been in IT for a couple of years, 23 years or so, after studying business, then specifically focused around BI and BI sales. And then been responsible for Yellowfin and Yellowfin BI, bringing it into the country together with Rick, our CEO, and built a successful business, introducing the product to the rest of the country, and then now working very closely with Yellowfin and their teams across the world. I love data, I love systems, I love analytics, which tends to expose me to more than what I probably should be doing, but I love this all. So it's a privilege for me today to talk to you about this, a topic that I really, really love. But just to take you through what you can expect from this afternoon, we're going to talk about contextual analytics. Just, what is that? What does it relate to? How does it play out to be in the world today? Then we're going to look at embedded analytics and the maturity curve. So it's just a way of measuring where you and your company find yourself with embedded analytics. Then we're going to look at some samples. We've been working with partners for the last 7 years. Instead of the last 5 years, a lot of embedding happening. And we've asked them to share some of these screens. And I'll show you some of those screens on various maturity levels. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the crux of today, is how do you implement contextual analytics, and what is it, how does it work, and how do you make that work? But before we go into that, maybe just a bit of a definition. Contextual analytics is when your dashboards are embedded directly into the software application. Now, there's various permutations of that. We're going to talk through how that is done and what the values are in the various different areas. The landscape today is such that there are a lot of embedding happening, but a lot of it is not contextual. So the focus of today is to see how can you get to that real value being contextual analytics, and how do you get to that level there. So why is it important for software companies to know about this? Today, as I've mentioned, a lot of applications ship with what is deemed to be bundled BI, or there's embedded dashboards into that. But often those are very, very static. You'd find that they're not contextual, and what that means is it might be a screen, it might ship with the application, but there's no relation between the actual application and then what's happening within the reporting stack or the dashboard stack that's there. It's also a way for companies to modernize the application. We're finding a lot of inquiries from typical software vendors or companies that have designed their own applications to see how can they use the concept of embedding dashboards to modernize that application. For the vendors out there, the people that are selling applications, for them, it's a lot about how do we upsell and how do we keep these customers. We've coined the phrase, how do we make them sticky? It's important that, yes, we can sell to them once. How do we keep them? How do we keep them happy? And in doing this, we modernize the app, we upsell more, and then these customers become more loyal over time. If we look at the maturity curve, just again, maybe some definitions around this. In the past, vendors have often applied or provided reporting or even self-service to the end users, but it was often standalone or disjointed. So we would find there are some reporting capability or maybe dashboards outside of the application that was often provided, but then more often than not, they were provided by a third party or even internal BI teams. And the problem with that is it's not linked to the business. This is often quite removed from business, and you get that disjointed, this is what the business wants, this is what IT gives them, or this is what the BI team gives them. So there's not a lot of continuity. It's also due to limits in technology. So up until a couple of years ago, there were not a lot of BI vendors that offered the capability to be integrated and or embedded, and even more so contextually embedded. And I do have to do a little bit of a punt. Yes, Yellowfin is sponsoring this event, and they're one of the products that really shine in how they can allow you to do this going forward. So in terms of modern BI platforms, we believe it's where they need to be today, and we believe that's why you guys have joined this webinar. So when we talk about then the maturity curve, we're looking at 5 stages or 5 levels of maturity. So level 1, I'm not going to go into specific slides there, but we all remember those character type reports, the 132 column line printed reports. Those were the ones that were shipped with applications. And how did you find yourself there? It was often a core application that just needed some output, some reporting stack, and it was done sort of as a byproduct. Often reporting was sold separately. I remember the days when you had to go out and you were to go and buy crystal reports just to be able to add reporting to the current application. So we don't see a lot of that anymore. I think the environment has matured significantly. If we look at level 2 or stage 2, that's where people said, well, you know, there's data contained in my application. And how do I access as the user? I own this data, but how do I access this data? And what came out was, hey guys, let's do an export. And suddenly the whole world became experts in terms of exporting data. They started using Excel. And as we know, until today, Excel is the biggest BI tool in the world or reporting tool in the world. But that comes with significant risk. So 2 things happens there. There's no single version of the truth. And secondly, there's no analytical capability, or that analytical capability is on a very, very low level. Following on that, we started seeing reporting stacks being implemented into applications. And this is where something like Crystal or some report engine was bundled with the application. It might have shipped with some embedded reports, but it was often not success enough for the whole business to be served by the reports that was done there. That raised 2 problems. Suddenly, IT became responsible for doing reporting, and they became so busy doing reporting that they couldn't focus on anything else. And again, the maturity there led to the point where people needed more. So what followed there is where I'm going to focus on today, and this is where most organizations are operating in today, which is stage 4. And what we find there, this is where you have an application. That application ships with a dashboard or a report embedded, but those dashboards and reports are not contextually aware. So we'll touch on the fact or the term contextual a little bit later. But as we look at the environment where these applications operate, they've got a medium or to high level of analytical capabilities, because often the data move from the operational system or the ERP system via some ETL process into an analytics system, whether that's Yellowfin, ClickView, Power BI. We see a lot of adoption, and we see some seamless integration between the data layer and the actual application. But it's still not contextually aware. So just as an example, we've asked some of our customers that are in the stage 4 of maturity, we've asked them to share some of the dashboards. And as an example, if we look at this screen, the application sits behind. So the frame on the left, the frame on the top, those are application frames, and they are managed by the application itself. And then embedded into this is a menu or a button or a highlight link that allows you to run dashboards within the application. The upside of that, it's seamless for the user. There's a single sign-on. Security can be managed in the same process. So it becomes less effort for the business user to access this information. And it becomes also less effort down the line for the BI team, because this is now being done beforehand and it's being made available as part of the application. Just as a second example, this is now where the user has chosen another menu item and another dashboard would come up. So typically, we find these organizations to be in the maturity curve moving up, and you'll often find that it's not mutually exclusive. You will find companies who typically start off with an easy integration, which would be this. And the way you can do this, you can literally get to a point where within a month or two, have embedded reports and dashboards into the application. It suddenly seems more modern, but then over time you might move into the stage 5. So if I move into stage 5 and just give you a bit of an example, what is contextual analytics? So the big difference with this is where the dashboards and the reports that are embedded becomes part of the workflow of the application. So as a user changes data while he's capturing the data, you will see that those dashboards would then update and the changes would be reflected in the visualizations. As an example, if we have an application where on the top left you apply filters, you'll see the updates of the dashboards, or even more so if you have an application like the medical application, you might come from a medical screen view where the doctor's looking at the history of a patient, and based on the dashboards that are embedded, that's passed through. So I'm looking at my patient, I'm looking at the history of the patient, and I'm even looking at some of the elements that might be relevant today. So it is very contextual, and it's part of the workflow. Just some other examples. Again, this was provided by one of our vendors, where the application seamlessly would use embedded reports. On the right-hand side, we're seeing some metrics there that have been calculated by, in this case, the BI system, in this case, Yellowfin, and visualized. And even on the left-hand side, where you would access a specific patient or a call center in this case, and you can see the activity of the call center agent dynamically. And as you navigate through the application, these dashboards will be updated. So it becomes very dynamic, and as I've said twice now, it becomes part of the workflow. Then what I've done, and Annaline's going to talk about this a bit more, but very mature applications, it becomes so seamless that the user would not see the difference between the application and the embedded analytics. The advantage of that is it's still seamless, there's still the single sign-on, and there's the analytical capability, but now you can add additional analytical features that the BI product might provide. As an example, and again, I'm not going to steal Annaline's thunder, but later on she'll talk you through the Fraxis platform, where this was embedded into the design criteria. So part of the design environment has the BI platform embedded, as well as the end application, which is a low-code app in their scenario, where you've got visualizations that are totally embedded into the platform there. So just to get to the crux of this, and how do you get to this point, the question might come up, are dashboards still valid? And it's definitely a case. It's not that embedded dashboards will replace, or contextual dashboards will replace normal dashboards. The use of dashboards will still be there. It'll typically be around monitoring the overall performance versus in a contextual environment, looking at transactional support. Or for the guy that wants to do the manual slice and dice, he needs more access or more history, he's maybe doing some research, versus within the embedded application, that is a guided analysis. And lastly, dashboards would then still fall into the realm of operational reporting, as opposed to contextual analytics that would be triggered by workflow or even operational activities that is automatically generated in the backend. So how do we get from embedded, old style embedded, to contextual analytics? And I think the big difference there, we're looking at standard dashboards and reports versus seamlessly merged analytics, where it's transparent for the user. Disjointed user experience, where often the customer or the end user would go from the ERP system, do a tab switch, or even worse, log into another application, versus a seamlessly integrated experience, no logging, single sign-on, all of those things are being addressed in the back end. You can look at a separate workflow. So often applications would take you through certain workflows, but then with the embedded stuff, you'll have that as part of the context. And as you go through the workflow, those dashboards are updated dynamically. Self-service has become very prevalent. We see a lot of need for self-service. We also see in our world, the audiences are maturing. So those self-service capabilities typically would feature in the old style or dashboard or analytics systems. But in contextual analytics, those would be automated or could be automated. It could be triggers and driven by the application itself. And then lastly, we're seeing a lot of insights being done manually, people looking at information versus the guided insights. And again, you'll see there's a huge trend for automation. Again, tools like Yellowfin now ships with modules that would do that for you. There's natural language query that enables the user to help himself. It might be within his application, or it could be as far as running something like signals, where the output of those dashboards or the incidents or the anomalies would actually be presented as part of the application. So you're seeing that dynamic flow. So how do you get from contextual or through the, how do you go through the process? The first component would be make sure that the visual components are embedded and become seamless. Secondly, those visual components would be synchronized with the application. So as you change an ID number or a customer number or product number, those dashboards would update dynamically. And then lastly, it becomes seamlessly part of the workflow that the user is using. So when we talk about embedded analytics, there are two different ways that they can manifest. The one could be predefined analytical paths or visualizations. So what happens there is it's predefined within the application, and the designer or the developer of the application and the BI team would decide where the navigation goes. It is typically done by implementing KPI numbers, line charts, or even maybe more sophisticated dashboards. But the crux of that, it's done and designed not by the user, it's designed beforehand. The alternative to that, or the other way of doing that, is to have dynamic analysis. This would be very much driven by the automation that I've mentioned before. These are triggered typically when thresholds are crossed or when specific anomalies occur, and the system is able to highlight that or identify that and then make that available as a visual to the end user. So just to show a bit of a difference between what we're seeing with these ones, on the left-hand side, it forms part of the workflow where, in this case, the user might look up specific brandies or the sales of brandies. He's got a dynamic dashboard that pops up. It's linked to the actual report stack that he's looking at. So in this case, looking at whiskies, and then visualize a lot of additional information for the whiskies. On the right-hand side, something else where a customer or a user might be looking at the stock levels, and as soon as the stock level drops below something or a metric there, that will automate a pop-up, in this case, by the BI team or the BI application. And in this case, the BI application was linked back to the ordering system where you can actually go and place the order based on a result that was given by the front end. So what are the considerations when you look to implement this? First of all, you need to know what you'd like to embed. It's important to understand where the value would sit. So where will you embed this into the application? And then lastly, how will you embed that? So typical questions that come from this is, are we going to implement something like a chatbot? The chatbot could be a form of an embedded analytics. Would it be a dashboard? Would it be maybe something like a data story? Or do we allow the user to have a natural language query? So part of those decisions we make would be, are we embedding links? Are we embedding via API? Or the different options that's available. So when we launched this webinar, we spoke about supercharging your application. And the crux for this is, how do you add value and how do you make that application relevant in today's terms? So to summarize there, it's about the workflow. It's about how you merge that into the core functionality. How do you apply dynamic alerts or guided behaviors? And then how do you automate this? So again, looking at the audience, we know we've got some software vendors here. So what is the value for your end user? In this case, you allow them to make data-driven decisions as opposed to navigating and not being contextually aware. You can guide them through an analysis process to get them to understand what they're looking at. And lastly, it increases the benefit of your application that you've made available to those users. For the stakeholders out there, what is different there is it allows you to differentiate the analytical capabilities. It becomes a stickier customer. We've spoken about that right in the beginning. It's where we enable the customer to feel more comfortable, to work closely with you, and then over time become more sticky. And of course, the revenue opportunity is there. As you upgrade your application, you can actually get more ability to sell that into them. So what can you do next? Looking at a way to do this, it's important to place your company and your product somewhere on the maturity curve, and it will be probably somewhere between level 3, 4, or 5. And I've said those are not mutually exclusive. You might start off with a level 4 integration, which could be done very easily, and then move over to a level 5 over time, which allows you to, again, to buy time, but start the process quickly. Consider, again, what it is that you'd like to achieve with this, and then look at something that's available and what are the skills that you're going to need to do this. We often spend time with our partners in teaching them or helping them to define the process going forward. From our experience, traditional SQL type developers or traditional report developers, they might not be strong in the visualization element. So you might need a marketing team, you might need a graphic team, you might need some people with business knowledge. So those are the different resources that would be needed to go from the various levels and to go into a next level of enhancing your application. So to make this easier, what we've done as part of this webinar, you'll find some links. These are, as I said, sponsored by Yellowfin, so we're very proud to make this available. There's a white paper that will allow you to go through the process and look at what we believe to be best practice. There's a document around the embedded analytics maturity model. It's very much tailored on what we presented today. And if at any given point you feel a need, please feel welcome to contact any of our team members, any of the Yellowfin team members. There are some links there. We can take you through a typical demonstration. And we also, as part of that process, often spend some time with you. We call it a day with your data. I know I can demo the Yellowfin Ski team, but it really makes sense when we show you your data and based on what you're looking at. So in close, I believe after today, you'll look at data differently. We know data is the currency of the future, but how do we enable the users to gain advantage and to start getting the value from the data that is in the applications? So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Annelien. Annelien de Jager is from a company called Intenda. They are one of our partners, and they've very successfully embedded Yellowfin, in this case, into their application stack. And I've asked them to share with you guys the process they've gone through. But let me not steal our thunder. So, Annelien, at this point, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Gustav. Yes, I would just want to say thank you to Gustav and Jeff. Thank you for the opportunity that we have today to share our experience. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit more about just who we are and why we actually needed embedded analytics, then why we chose Yellowfin and what has been the value for us in embedding it into our application. So who we are, we have been established since 2001. So we've been around for just over 20 years already. Time flies. Some of the products and services that we deliver is our flagship Fraxis data platform. I'll explain a little bit about that more now. Our business intelligence, data and analytics consulting. And then we also do bespoke application development for our customers, because we really believe that we see our customers as our partners, not just end users. So that's where we try to add value to them. We also operate across 3 different continents currently. So what is Fraxis? Just to explain to you a bit more so that you can understand why we needed to look at embedded analytics for it. So Fraxis is a metadata-driven platform that consolidates different applications, files, databases, as well as artificial intelligence, machine learning models, and then you can present these in a relational view with full data lineage and a pedigree that you can see where your data comes from. What's important for us then is that you can interact with your data And then Fraxis is also driven by serverless microservices, which enables vertical and horizontal scalability, which is very important when you look at big data, as most of you will know by now. There are over 230 ready-to-use data sources, as well as the ability to create custom-made connections, regardless of location or platform. So again, very scalable. So we see Fraxis as a very powerful engine. But the question is always, what can you then do with that engine? So what we developed Fraxis from 2013 already, and then we developed the modules as we went along and as time went by. During this time, we developed our own visualization tool. However, it was lacking in functionality. It wasn't embedded. And then we decided to rather pivot back and focus on our core components, which is our metadata platform, and then extend that capability, which is our strength. So we had a lot of mechanics that could work on that engine and that have really developed that engine to be very powerful. But we decided then to rather partner with a suitable provider for our visualization and our BI module. The big question was, though, what type of BI tool we're going to use, and then which one we're going to use. So how do you see what's happening in your powerful engine at the back end? When you drive a car, you look at your dashboard. You look at your dashboard to see your mileage, to see your torque, to see how that engine is performing. And that's why we needed embedded analytics, because it's great if we have a powerful engine, but if you can't see how that engine is performing, it falls flat. It's only the mechanics that can look under the hood, and not all of us are mechanics, are we? So we needed a powerful analytics module to complement the rest of the Fraxis modules. We wanted to provide our clients with actionable insights, as well as be able to interact with the data, not just have a stagnant view of it. So we decided to go with embedded analytics tool and not just a run-of-the-mill BI dashboard. And to latch on to what Gustav have been explaining, and to recap from his presentation, embedded analytics is the capability where data analysis occurs within the user's natural workflow without the need to toggle to another application, and the end user can identify and mitigate the issues, spot opportunities, and then to maximize a lot quicker than traditional BI applications. So we looked at the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and specifically at the visionaries, because we needed a provider with a strong differentiated vision for delivering a modern BI platform, and who was known as a thought leader and innovator. So we found Yellowfin, and we found that they offered, the offering that they gave really best fitted our needs and was a best fit to implement in Fraxis. And one of the reasons, not only because it was founded by a South African, had to throw that in there, but Gustav and the team were very accessible and flexible to our needs. The product strengths and openness and the composability slotted in perfectly with Fraxis, and that really enabled us to give a full data fabric architecture. So we embedded Yellowfin into Fraxis, and we renamed it Insights. We used Insights as a visualization module then, and we enabled the pass-through authentication. The security then comes from Legos, with each our data management module, and then that authenticates through to Insights. So some of the differentiators that stood out for us from Yellowfin as opposed to other BI tools, because it has the reports, the dashboards, those type of things that you would expect from any BI tool. But what stood out for us were the signals, which is automatically analyzes your data to identify data events of significance, and then it generates personalized alerts, which is very useful. Another thing that stood out for us is the timeline. That really gives you a collaboration and gives you a BI ecosystem, because it allows your users to interact with each other and with events that have occurred in the system without, again, leaving and going to other applications. So all of this then gives you a powerful BI ecosystem in which our clients can then truly make their data become meaningful and actionable. That then completed our picture, so that we have now the Insights module embedded into our Fraxis, and that gives us an end-to-end solution to drive our powerful platform and see what the Fraxis engine in the background can be delivering, and to see that with interactive dashboards. two ways that we have integrated. We have integrated it firstly in our Opus module. That is then what Gustav has been talking about the stage 5, because that's our bespoke application development, and that is then fully embedded, which is some of the screenshots that you can see there. Another way that we've integrated it is with Insights that I've just been explaining now, and that gives the self-service BI, which gives the full functionality of Yellowfin. For those of you that have seen Yellowfin, some of that which I will explain now will be familiar, but I will be showing it and will be screen sharing that now for those of you that are not so familiar with Yellowfin yet to see how we have embedded that. So I'm just going to share my screen here. So in the landing page, you would see then you would have the different modules that would come up. And this is done by one of my colleagues, Quivers, I think is also on the webinar. And you would then go to your data management where you can then add the different data sources as we've been explaining. So you can also even add that Excel sheet that has been lying on someone's desktop. For this example, we've been using data that's publicly available, customer service request data. Then this just shows you how you can visualize your data, interact with it. You can apply transformations, apply calculations, and then you can directly go to the Insights module, which is in the embedded BI. Those data objects that were created are then immediately available to then create reports. And for those of you that have seen Yellowfin before or any other BI tool, you have all the functionality there of going into different time periods, integrating, looking at different metrics. Just pausing here to show that what's also very flexible for us about Yellowfin is that you can see the skin. We could change the look and feel and brand it with our own branding so that the customer, when interacting with this, they have a seamless experience. Again, which makes Yellowfin great because they're also flexible with that. Then this would then just show the customers that would have then interaction with the live data. So that because it's metadata driven from the Fraxis side, you are connecting with the live data and then can visualize it on the go. I'm going to then skip to one of our other demos that we did, or another example where we did data for a procurement client. This is also a dashboard that just shows some of the different widgets that you can add on there, and different data that we're looking at, suppliers and bids and quotes. And then you also have that functionality to drill down, look at different time periods. Again, as I said, this is interactive with your data. You can also cache it and look at specific time periods if need be. But for this example, we then have different sub-tabs that the client could also use to. We like data to tell a story. So if you start with an overview and then let the data, as the user clicks through and goes through the different stages of their data, they ask the questions and then can click on different metrics, different time periods to see more of their data and to interact with their data. So I'm going to skip a little bit forward. You can then, from the dashboard, go to the reports as well, where you have different filters. What is also nice for us about Yellowfin is that these filters that you applied from the dashboard would then seamlessly go through to your actual reports as well. You can also bookmark different filters, which is also very convenient. And then, again, interact with it from a dashboard point of view, from a report point of view. Then we also have, as with other visualization tools, I'm just going to skip a little bit forward, we have the geomaps. What's also nice about interacting with or embedding it with Yellowfin, they have on their they have some geopacks available on their marketplace where you can then integrate with different geomaps and then just apply to your system and apply different graphs on there. Then what's also one of the nice differentiators for us about Yellowfin is the presentations. So here we would show how you can create a presentation. You can create different templates for your clients. Again, you can customize it with different logos or setups for your client or for your product specifically. And then from that presentations, you can actually work with interactive data. I mean, we all know other presentations, it's the stagnant data that you've maybe done some screenshots or some PDFs, but when your users or when your audience then asks you different questions within presentation, you have to say, wait, let me just go back and just go get those answers for you. But with this, you can actually build presentations that gives you live interaction with your data. You can add then different widgets from reports that you have created previously. And then in that, widgets that you add, when you preview or present your presentation, you will actually be presenting live. You can do the drill throughs, drill downs while you are interacting with your audience and answer those questions on the go. So again, having data being consumable and actionable. And as with any other presentation tool, you have all the other functionality. Again, this is just a little small preview of what can be done. As Gustav also mentioned, you're welcome to ask for a demo and get a full demo of what Yellowfin can actually do and all the interactions and the functionality of the system can do for you. Again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So another convenient differentiator for us is this timeline that you will see. That shows you a whole snapshot of all the, or whole history actually, not even a snapshot of all the different reports and dashboards that you were looking at and that you have been collaborating on. That's the collaboration tool there at the bottom where you can actually have comments, questions, tasks. And that also makes it different for us because it's a whole BI ecosystem. You can, while you're interacting with your data, you can ask one of your colleagues, for example, why was this 2019 year had such high volumes, and you can tag your colleague. And then your colleague would get that comment when they log in on their side and then see it on their timeline as well. And there you can see from the timeline then, you would see those different comments. And again, as you can see with the branding, when you embed it into your brand, you can totally customize it for you and for your users to get that experience. Another very useful functionality for us is the story that you can create, very much like a blog post. And what's convenient about that is, for example, some of your customers or users might have specific reports that they have to maybe do on a monthly basis to management, or a board report that they have to do. And that's where you maybe want to write a bit more about the analysis of your data or interpret some of the results. And what's nice about this, you can create this story and then do your analysis and then also link with your different reports, which again makes your data alive. Because it links with the actual reports, the data is always updated. You don't have to be worried that you were looking at a screenshot of data that's already outdated. So then if you, again, you can add different widgets, and then that widget that will be added again when you publish it will be live. What's also nice about, for us about the BI tool, and specifically from the Yellowfin side, is the sharing capabilities that we can then share it with different. You can just go to that side. You can, if you're on a report, you can collaborate and share it with different users. You can embed it, you can email it, links that you can share on it. And then you can also, all the traditional ones, if you really want to export it, then you can still do, and you can still use your Excel. Some users we know that's just still very comfortable with that. So it gives you all that functionality that you would want in a BI tool. So as I say, this was just a small little snapshot of, and a small little demonstration of how it looks in our system. And there's still so much more you can do. Every customer is different. We always say, look at your users, look at what they want from the business questions that they want answered, and that the data can really be valuable and interactive for them. And for us, embedding Yellowfin into our platform really made that difference. So over to you again, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Gustav, and thank you, Annalene. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. While we're waiting for maybe a few questions to pop in, I've got a question, if I may. And from your experiences, and your benefit of hindsight is wonderful here for maybe some of the guys who haven't approached this yet. What would be your biggest learning, or your biggest, maybe even a surprise as you approach this project? What would be the thing that would have surprised you most, either on a positive or a negative perspective, on what you saw as you moved into that process?
Yeah, I think as always, as you go through something new, you learn. And I think there's the one thing I think that we can say that we would do differently is just go with Yellowfin from the start. Instead of trying reinventing the wheel, it would have just been so much easier if we just went with a partner already. So that would be one of those things. But I can really say some of our other learnings, and I've asked our team as well, because as with anything, this is always a team effort, is to don't underestimate your user experience. People are nowadays used to consumer apps, and your business applications need to really be as user-friendly and interactive as consumer apps can be. So don't underestimate that. One of the other learnings we can say is determine the skills required before the time and make sure that you get the right team in place to be able to do the embedding and the integration. There's on the technical side, on the business side, Gustav also mentioned some of those things that it's not necessarily just your traditional SQL or report writers. You need a whole team to be able to make this really valuable for your customers and to be able to consume the data that they are producing. And then another learning for us was for your stakeholders, keep them updated, but not only just informed, also show them progress as you go along. While you're embedding it, if it is your the people, if it's just on your own app or if it's for specific customers through your application, mock-ups really help to maybe show them a few ideas and to do it maybe more in an agile way, that you show them some of the progress, go back and design it differently. So yeah, I would say those are some of our learnings that we've learned in the process, Jeff.
Great, thank you very much. And we have a question in from Zito, who probably answered some of that, but I will ask the question specifically. And the question is, how easy or not did you find the internal adoption journey as you rolled it out? It's one thing saying to people this is coming, and then when you actually deliver it, I guess it's a hearts and minds. Was the adoption by the end user community? Because a lot of people's approach is, well, what's in this for me? Was the adoption, did it meet the expectations you had from as you rolled this out, that the business did actually adopt it and embrace it properly?
Yes. Now, I can definitely say, again, there's the different users. You can see the people that were almost longing for being able to interact with the data. This made it so much more seamless, and to be able to click and drag and drop that self-service BI. This really gave the speed of being able to deliver that much quicker. It is the adoption in terms of, if I can call it, the mechanics under the hood. For them, it's still probably easier to look under the hood than to design the dashboard. And that's why we say you need a combination of a team that are able to interact with it. But yes, in terms of the BI value, it's definitely been a great adoption.
And just to add on to that, from day one, did you have a business performance metric aligned to why you wanted to embed analytics? Was there some key business KPIs as well as some end user KPIs that was delivering against maybe a financial plan or an investment plan?
Yes, no, there was some clients that have really been lacking the visualization of their data for quite a while. So we had almost, I could say, a backlog of visualization that we had to first deliver on in a much more contextual way than the traditional way. So we all were already on the back burn. And so, yeah, there was a good adoption of that going forward. Wonderful.
Fabio's raised another good question. This one, maybe you want to answer. Well, either of you two guys can answer because it's relevant to both of you. But what about the data storage and data replication? Does Yellowfin need to store data in its own storage? Gustav, do you want to have a go at that one, being a techie?
Yes. Thanks for the question. I think it's a very relevant and very good question. The short answer is no. We do not typically need to have the data specifically imported into Yellowfin or into something else. But maybe just to put it in context, talking about contextual analytics, when you are embedding the system, typically you might be reading data from your transactional system. So in that case, you might have a combination of where Yellowfin or the report or the dashboard might read some data from the transactional system and the transactional tables. But the moment you move from operational to analytical, it might be that you need access to a data warehouse. And in that scenario, we've partnered with a company called Exasol. It's a high-end analytical database, which allows you to seamlessly migrate data from the transactional system, where some of the reads might happen, into the analytical database where maybe you have complex calculations. So although we don't need to have data replicated somewhere else, there are some value in doing that. Annalyn, I think you guys have also gone through the process of identifying what gets read, transactionally, and what gets read from a data warehouse.
Yes, no, for us, so by using the Fraxis platform, it's all metadata driven. So none of that data has to be stored anywhere locally. It can be cached, as I say, to help with latency and to help with processing. But again, it depends on the user requirements. But yeah, that's the power of Fraxis, is that you don't need to, you read the data directly from source.
I've got another question as well, just while I'm thinking of my own questions. From your perspective, Gustav, when you're engaging with typical prospects, and I'm sure Intender was one of those in the past, what is the biggest hurdle that you think you have to convince or get over? What's the biggest objection or hurdle that you see when you're engaging with lots of different customers? Is there some common theme that you know you're going to expect to have to overcome in terms of people's experience, maturity?
So yes, Jeff, I would put them in two buckets. Often we would get the companies that, let's call them software vendors or software development companies, that believe they need to modernize the application. They believe that adding BI is going to be an easy project and it's going to be something they can do quickly. And the challenge with those ones are typically you quickly running to the point where you realize the data is not what you wanted. It's maybe you're not capturing the right level of data, maybe you're not aggregating the data correctly, and often the data is just not there. So category one of those would be guys that think we can easily do the BI project. Then there'd be the other crowd that they're far more mature in terms of the process. They've realized and understood that an ERP system or reading data only from the transactional system is not the best thing to do. And with those customers and those guys, we find it a bit easier. They understand the difference between having raw data from the application versus having data into the, let's call it a data warehouse or operational data store, and then the combination of those two. The adoption and the challenges within those organizations, and I think I've touched on this, is they would also believe that maybe their current report developers are the right people to do the dashboards. It typically is not the case. So although, yes, logic does play a role, and you might need some SQL skills or some SQL knowledge, not necessarily the language skills, but the understanding of data structures. At this point, with contextual analytics and adding a lot of visualization, that becomes as important as the back end. So make sure that your skill set across your organization is there. Make sure you've got access to people that can add visualization components needed, and make sure you've got business people that understand what are the questions that are being asked and what are the answers. We also see very technical people designing a lot of stuff that business just doesn't get, doesn't make sense to them. So it's often driven from business, know what they want, get somebody to interpret that, and then let the IT team in this case then needs.
Wonderful, thank you. And Annalyn, one final question before we wrap up, if there's no more questions. What's next for analytics for Intender, and how far ahead are you all already starting to think about the next evolutions you need to take care of?
Yes, I think it's, as I say, the options are so broad now. I always drop the analogy with it. It's like, for those that know Lego blocks, we have now the capability of having all those little Lego blocks in different pieces. Now we can build anything from it. And it's now really to look at our clients, for those that are already adopting it, where can we help them and walk with them a journey in terms of, as Gustav have said now, what's the user requirements? What do the business want to get answered out of this? And then help them to embed it, to contextualize it, to get the full value of the products and the platform that we can deliver with the visualization tools on it. And then on the other side, looking at those that are or have not been using it already, we're really getting quite a lot of new clients on board as well, and then walking that journey with them as well. And as Gustav is saying, being that translator between what the business requires and what the IT can deliver, and then making sure that they have that value added. So lots of scope. I think it's the imagination is the limit at this stage.
Thank you so much. Probably just the last call for questions, if there is any, please. I'll give it another few seconds, and then if there isn't any more, we'll let these wonderful people wrap up. So if there is any more, that'd be great. Look at that. We've even given people 5-10 minutes of their time back. That's a perfect webinar when we're not rushing to the end. It's just my honor and privilege to thank you for, well, first of all, thank everybody for attending. I really appreciate their taking their time and their busy agendas, but most importantly, thank you to Gustav at AIGS, and very much a big thank you to Annelien and the team at Intender for taking the time to explain exactly what they've been doing. It's been a wonderful story. As we've alluded to, there will be follow-ups. This has been recorded. We will send emails out to people who've registered and attended. So if there's anything you'd like to understand in more detail, please reach out. If there's anything you'd just like to have a conversation with at all, please reach out to the Yellowfin or the AIGS team, and we will do our very best to respond to you as soon as possible. Finally, again, thank you to everybody. Thanks again to Annelien. Thanks to Gustav. Everybody else, have a wonderful day and take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Same from our side. Good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.